I made a promise to myself that if I made it to and through that surgery, I would dedicate the rest of my life and any time that it did give me to giving back and helping other patients that came behind me, which is what I've done every day since.
This is the James Cancer-Free World podcast. I'm Steve Wartenberg, and my guest is Katie Coleman. Katie recently came to the James as a senior advisor for translational innovation, a new and novel role here at the James. And her background makes Katie the perfect person to take this on. Katie was diagnosed with a rare and late-stage kidney cancer in December 2020. She was 29 at the time and had recently been married. This diagnosis, of course, changed her life in so many ways as Katie became an advocate during her own cancer journey and for others with rare forms of cancer. She connected with the Rare Cancer Research Foundation, created Oncologic, was the founder and is the president of the Chromophobe and Oncocytic Tumor Alliance, and is a Foundation Board of Trustees member of the American Association for Cancer Research. And now, in her new role here at the James, Katie will use what she's learned to help the vast army of world-class scientists and physicians turn their ideas into advances. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Wow, you have an amazing story, and I'm really excited to hear it. And so let's sort of start in December of 2020. Tell us a little bit about where you were living and what you were doing and your cancer diagnosis.
Yeah, so in December 2020, I was living in just outside of Salt Lake City, Utah. I was a newlywed. I had just gotten married 2 months prior. And my husband and I actually happened to be building a new house in the new city that we were moving to, and getting ready to start a family. So I'd been feeling off for a number of years prior to that, but could never come to a diagnosis for anything.
When you mean you'd gone to doctors and they couldn't diagnose?
Yeah, everybody kind of just thought it was anxiety due to my age and how I was presenting at the time. And so I was doing kind of one final workup for my health before we decided to have kids, and was getting established with new primary care doctors and everything in the city that we were going to be moving to. And it was through that process that I ended up feeling hardness in my upper right abdomen. I brought it up to my primary care physician at the time that I wasn't too concerned about it, but it just kept eating at me. When I noticed that it wasn't going away, and it just felt different. It was like very hard. And so I actually ended up deciding to go into an urgent care to see what this might be. I'll actually never forget that decision. I was on the phone with my mom just before I went in, and she picked up on that something was wrong in my voice and asked me what was wrong. And I ended up telling her that night that I said, I'm worried that we've caught this too late, that it's stage 4 and has gone to my liver, which is a wild statement for me to say. That was a Google spiral that I had gone down. I thought I had stage 4 colon cancer at the time. But when I went into the urgent care, they felt the hardness, sent me to the emergency room. And as soon as they put an ultrasound on me in the emergency room, they found I had a very, very large tumor on my right kidney. It was about 12 centimeters, so larger than a softball. And then what would end up being about 15 to 20 tumors in my liver. So it's wild that I articulated those words. I did not have a medical background or anything like that. But did end up having stage 4 cancer that had spread to my liver.
So that meant it started in the kidney and
Yep.
and metastasized and went to your liver.
Yes, correct. Mm-hmm.
And what's that like when you hear those words? You have stage 4 kidney cancer.
I had pictured that moment, and I thought that I'd be terrified and devastated, and those emotions definitely came. But the very first emotion I felt when I still remember him. It's like a picture perfect memory in my mind of the doctor that gave me that news in the ER.
No, wait, what was the date of this?
So this was New Year's Eve 2020.
Right, the New Year's
Yeah.
Eve. Wow.
Mm-hmm. And
Not a good way to start a new year.
no, I thought putting 2020 behind us was going to be so exciting. And
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
that's right. In the midst of the pandemic.
Yep. and was kicking off this new year, unfortunately, now not in the best circumstances. But I remember when he told me that they thought that this could have been kidney cancer, and that it had spread. The first emotion I had was actually relief, which I was not expecting at all. But it was because for the first time, I had somebody sitting across from me who believed me, and it wasn't all in my head. Um, I remember, like, it's like, for those that have probably been diagnosed with cancer, I think it's one of those things in your life that you always remember, and you remember like everything that was happening around it. I like remember looking over my shoulder to see my husband who had broken out in tears and he was devastated. And I was like, that seems like the appropriate reaction here.
Do
Um,
you think you were in shock a little?
I think there was a little bit, but not, it honestly was relief. I
Yeah.
just like, it was a feeling of, I remember that feeling because he told me where all of the calls were being referred to, and we were getting me in to see an oncologist. I didn't even know what an oncologist was at that time. Um, but it felt like I had gone from kind of shouting into the void that something was wrong to a situation where I felt like I had a team of doctors willing to kind of advocate for me and help me through this next process. It was is having a name for kind of what I was facing and what was feeling wrong that brought that relief. The devastation definitely hit afterwards, especially after my husband and I Googled the overall survival stats, which at the time for stage 4 kidney cancer were only 8%.
Wow.
They thankfully have risen thanks to advancements in treatments over the past several years. But the devastation came afterwards, but that very first emotion was relief, which was something that I never in a million years would have expected.
So I know this is a long and complicated journey, but kind of
Yeah.
fill us in on what happened next. Your treatment, which knock on wood has been successful, and from what I understand, you're in remission.
So when I was diagnosed, because the type of tumor I had might have been less likely to start to respond to immunotherapy, which was the initial treatment that was proposed to me, I ended up getting a second opinion from another institution down in Texas, where they understood the biology a little bit more of my disease and recommended a different treatment to start on. That was a TKI, so it was a pill that I took every day instead of an infusion of immunotherapy.
Was it the pill and immunotherapy?
No, it
It
was
was
a TKI, so it's kind of more of a targeted treatment,
okay.
and it's targets kind of the mutations that can happen in the cancer, and also this one blocked like angiogenesis, which is kind of blood vessel formation, and how tumors kind of grow and spread.
So during this process, as you mentioned before, at first they just wanted to kind of keep you alive for a while till they
Yeah.
figured it out.
Mhm.
What's going through your mind where you don't know the outcome?
Yeah, I have never been more terrified in my entire life. The and hopeless. I had gone from literally my husband and I, when I was diagnosed, we had just been down visiting the house that we were building, and we were picking out baby rooms for our future children. And I had gone from picking out baby rooms to picking out cancer centers in the span of what felt like 24 hours. Um, the shift of that is really, really hard to explain, and something that I had a lot of difficulty with. I've always in my life kind of always been planning 5 steps ahead and um, trying to plan out my future. And it felt like now
And
I
now,
didn't even
yeah,
know
you
what next week would look like. Um, I really connected with other advocates during that period of time, which really kind of helped me get through that process, and part of why I ended up becoming an advocate myself through my diagnosis. Um,
it sounds like you already were an advocate in seeking other ways and other places for treatment.
I didn't know anything about cancer at the time, and definitely not kidney cancer. And so I wasn't sure if I had any hope or how much time I had. Um, and it was actually at the end of a spiral, which is a whole different story. But I ended up searching Instagram hashtags for other patients that were still alive with kidney cancer, hoping that I could find any hope of what the future might look like. And I actually ended up connecting with a gentleman in the UK that ended up explaining to me some of his treatments, the advancements. And he was the first person to give me hope and connect me with a bunch of advocates online through various support groups. that really emphasized the importance of second opinions, helped connect me with resources to learn about my disease. Um, and while I say I advocated for myself to kind of find who might be the best place to go to learn more about that or to get a second opinion and what kind of places you look for. Um, it was really advocates that helped point me in the right direction for that. Otherwise, I would have been very lost.
And that brought you to Texas, where you got that new, was it a new type of therapy treatment, or?
Yeah, so it was relatively new, but it had been approved, FDA approved. I actually connected with a patient that was in a clinical trial for that drug. So I'd actually known a little bit more, again, from the advocates that I had connected um, with. And I was on that treatment for about 2.5 months-ish, um, all while I was still very active in these advocate communities. Surgery still wasn't an option for me kind of anywhere I went due to the not only the size and the amount of tumors that I had, um, but also I had a small internal bleed during a biopsy, which meant I wasn't a great surgical candidate because your liver and your kidney are highly, highly vascular organs. So it made it kind of everything a little bit more complicated along the way. But about 6 months into my diagnosis, I ended up being connected with the NCI and the Center for Cancer Research in Bethesda, Maryland, which is kind of like our country's research hospital. And there was a specific protocol for rare kidney cancers that allowed a team of doctors to take a chance on me surgically. And that is ultimately what ended up kind of changing my prognosis.
So they were able to do surgery because the medicine had shrunk it enough that it was surgically possible?
Yeah.
Or,
So it actually, the medication did help. I did actually have a response to that, which was surprising, and we weren't necessarily expecting. We weren't sure if I was going to respond to anything. But the responding to that helped prevent my tumors from growing into critical um, structures that would have prevented surgery for my liver in particular. Shrunk my cancer a little bit, but not too much. I was only on it for a short period of time. But really, what changed the ability to go through with surgery was that there was this research protocol and a team of doctors that really understood the biology of my cancer. So there was a lab there that studied oncocytomas and rare kidney cancers. Um, Again, oncocytomas are typically known to be benign. So this team of doctors, it was a very large team, kind of all got together and reviewed my case and the biology of my case. And they kind of decided that since this tumor is normally meant to be benign and the only place that it had spread to was my liver, that there was a chance that if they could remove the tumor from my kidney and all of the spots in my liver, that it might not go anywhere else. We didn't know for sure. It was very, very clear this was anyone's best guess, but it was also my best shot. So
it sounds like when you went under, as
mhm.
they, and you didn't know the outcome when you
Yeah.
woke up.
Yep. And that's actually the motivation behind everything that I do now and do today. So I made a promise to myself that if I made it to and through that surgery, I would dedicate the rest of my life and any time that it did give me to giving back and helping other patients that came behind me, um, which is what I've done every day since. So that's kind of what motivated me to pivot my career into this space and to change all the ways I was advocating to get a lot more involved as well too.
Wow. And like you said, you have dedicated your life to that. But it seems, and listening to your story, like what I've learned, and I'm guessing you learned, is the key things are being an advocate, finding the right comprehensive cancer center, the right
Yep.
clinical trial, the right doctors, and really, and the value and importance of research as we go forward, because 10 or 15 years ago, you would have had a different outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what made me so motivated to get involved in this space is I think honestly because of the uniqueness of my cancer, I really had to learn from all aspects of it. It was the basic science and basic biology that helped drive some of those decisions, why that team was willing to take a chance on my case. That normally doesn't happen. Basic science usually kind of goes along a process to kind of go into translational research and then clinical trials. And it really let me see early on the power and how all of those things connect together to bringing better outcomes for patients overall, and the importance of finding the right care and, like you said, advocating for yourself and getting to the team of experts, which is why I feel incredibly honored to be here at the James now, where I'm surrounded by phenomenal teams every single day that I watch that do that same thing for other patients.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing your story. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to learn a little bit about your advocacy and a little bit about what you're doing here at the James.
Look forward to it.
The best outcomes for treating cancer come from early detection and early diagnosis.
The James Cancer Diagnostic Center at Ohio State
is designed to provide rapid evaluation and a clear diagnosis.
We are transforming care by giving patients direct access
to cancer experts who study and treat cancer every day.
If you think you have cancer, the choice is clear.
Choose the James Cancer Diagnostic Center.
We're back with Katie, and it's just an amazing story, and thank goodness you were an advocate for yourself, and thank goodness you did well in surgery. And like you said, you were going to dedicate your life to advocacy. So fill us in on what have you been doing since, I guess it's mid-2021.
Yeah. So that surgery was in June of 2021. I actually started advocating shortly before that. So I was diagnosed around the same time as about 5 other young women that ended up being diagnosed with chromophobe kidney cancer. We all got diagnosed around the same time.
And you connected through social media?
Yes. And mainly because because of the pandemic, quite honestly. That was actually a blessing in disguise for us, because we were going to all of our appointments alone. And so we really became a support system for each other. We'd all be texting each other from waiting rooms. The minute we got our results back, we were sharing it with each other. And we really became this support system for each other, navigating through, so chromophobe kidney cancer is a rare type of kidney cancer as well, too. So navigating through all the uncertainties. When we found out that my cancer didn't end up being chromophobe kidney cancer, I remember going to this group and a larger group for chromophobe kidney cancer in general, and the support group, and asking, like, do I need to leave? Like, because I had a metastatic oncocytoma. And they all were like, no, you're crazy. Like, you're one of us. We're adopting you. You're one of us now. And so when I was initially diagnosed, we were looking for information and research on chromophobe kidney cancer, and it was pretty much non-existent. There wasn't a lot of research. There weren't dedicated treatment options for it. And we kept asking why. The answer we kept getting everywhere we asked that question was, it's too rare. It's just how it is. But we weren't going to take that answer. And so we started fundraising. One of the women, Catherine, actually started kicking off the first ever patient-led chromophobe kidney cancer grant, rallied our group all together, and we all started fundraising for that grant. This was all still while I was in treatment.
So you raised money to then award a grant for research into this?
Yes,
okay.
yes. So this would be the first ever foundation grant for chromophobe kidney cancer. And so I went through with treatment. I had my surgery. And then as I came out of surgery, about the week after, or week or two after my surgery, once I was kind of out of the hospital, but just recovering before I went back home, I learned that this grant was only $5,000 away from $50,000 is what this grant was initially. So we were $5,000 away from our goal. And I remember this is something that cancer completely changed my perspective in life on. Before, I would have always said, like, oh, I'll do it when I'm feeling better. Like, I'll start fundraising again when I'm feeling better. But being in a place where I never knew if tomorrow I'd be feeling better than I did today made me stop putting things off for tomorrow, and kind of made me ask myself, if I never felt better than I did today, would I regret not taking action on something today? The answer to that is almost always yes. And so just a couple weeks out from surgery, I ended up doing a fundraiser for 5K for the last 5K. So I was committing that in just 2 months, I would complete a 5K. I was going to walk it, not run it.
2 months after your surgery?
Yes.
After massive major surgery?
Yeah. It was a bit ambitious, but it helped us raise the last $5,000. And I did walk out every step of that 5K. And that helped fund that first ever grant. So that kicked off the first ever grant for chromophobe kidney cancer that was foundation led, and a first ever dedicated grant. And since then, I've continued to advocate for chromophobe kidney cancer. We've had several grants. And then I went on to start a nonprofit for that type of cancer as well, too.
It's interesting. A lot of us here in Columbus through Pelotonia have learned that it's not quite as hard as we thought to fundraise, and very rewarding to fundraise.
Yeah.
And that you've really become an expert at that.
Yeah, it's actually funny. I started a nonprofit, but I never liked fundraising initially, right? Like I always thought like
everyone has that hurdle.
Yeah, like you don't want to ask somebody for money. It's really hard. It's a hard thing to do. But I realized that it gives other people meaning to be able to help support something. It's hard to describe that feeling, which I'm sure so many people here know as they've fundraised and participated in Pelotonia. The camaraderie that comes around that is just completely irreplaceable. And community, that was honestly a big reason why I was very excited to come here to the James and to Columbus, was I saw how much the community was involved here and cared about things like the Pelotonia. And I saw many of the same things that I saw throughout my diagnosis that really made a big difference.
Now, in a previous podcast with Kim Rathmel, the new CEO here at the Comprehensive Cancer Center in the James, she's the one that brought up your name and your new job. And I'm curious how you two initially connected.
Yeah, so we connected through the kidney cancer space.
Because she is a kidney cancer.
Yes,
expert.
she was a kidney cancer oncologist. She also has a lab. And I was trying to think back to when we very first connected. I think so when I was initially diagnosed, I didn't have any background in the medical field, didn't understand any of the papers that I was reading and trying to understand so that I knew how to advocate for myself and get a second opinion. So I ended up turning to social media to learn a lot. And I found on these platforms, that's where everyone was publishing the papers, the latest updates from the conferences that they were attending. I feel like I probably stumbled across her for the first time in those settings, and then connected through these kidney cancer conferences that I would go to, and kind of had connected in various spaces there. And then she ultimately reached out to me a few years ago when they were doing a lab retreat to come speak to the members of their lab, kind of share what the patient experience is. And so that's the first time that I really got to see kind of what happens in a lab and the behind the scenes of things, and where we kind of connected probably on a, had more time to like kind of learn about kind of her work more in depth.
So when did you start talking more about possibly coming here? Because it couldn't have been that long ago because she started less than a year ago here.
Yeah. So I, of course, followed as she went over to the NCI and was excited about the work that was being done there. As a patient of the NCI at the time as well, too, I always kind of kept in touch with everything that was going on, and I always paid attention. So I was really excited when she went over there. And then when I heard that she came to the James, one, I knew all of the important work that she has done previously. I had experience to see how her lab works, and was really excited about what that probably can do will and is doing at a cancer center as well, too. And this was kind of through the period of time last year where I was building a lot in the space. I built a couple platforms as a software engineer. I was doing a lot in advocating.
Your background is as a software engineer.
Yes.
So you could, okay.
Yep, exactly.
So you could build websites and can navigate social media, TikTok, Instagram. Okay.
Yeah. And as I was seeing how much technology was advancing, it became really important to me that those changes came from inside of a health system. I think we're moving really fast in a lot of places right now. And I think the most responsible way to do it, that will have the biggest differences for patients, is in a health system. So when I heard that Dr. Rathmel had come here, and that there was this opportunity for innovation kind of brewing here. I was very excited to join and to be able to empower the team here, both faculty and on the research side.
So it's only been a few months, I think about 3 months that you've been here. And so I know it's too soon to say we're doing this, this, and this, but give everyone a sense of what translational innovation means and sort of your role in helping others take their ideas forward.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And translational innovation to me, maybe I'll kind of back up a little bit and share kind of, again, what made me really excited about this role here and being a part of a health system for this. So as I mentioned, kind of for the past 5.5 years, I've been building in the space. I've worked for nonprofits. I have my own nonprofit. I've built platforms.
Say again the name of your nonprofit.
The Chromophobe and Oncocytic Tumor Alliance. We go by COA.
Okay.
That's much more difficult to say. But I've been in all of these various spaces. I've attended all of these conferences in the space, all the largest like oncology and research conferences. And I see and hear all of the excitement and the ideas happening. And then, so one of my favorite things at any conference, which people think is kind of odd, but is the poster session of conferences. It's where you can really kind of see somebody present the data on their research, something that they've dedicated an insane amount of time to. They kind of all stand beside a poster and kind of present that for feedback from their peers.
And these posters sort of give the highlights of their research and what they're working on.
Yes, exactly.
And there's hundreds of them at these conferences.
Yes. And so when you walk by, it's a lot of people just standing next to their poster. I did a poster for the first time at the AACR, the American Association for Cancer Research, their annual meeting last year. Stood by my own poster. So know what that feeling is like as you're watching people walk by. But it's a time where you can like really understand what somebody is passionate about. And there's no greater feeling to me in the world than talking to somebody about the thing that they're passionate about. There's just an energy that comes out of them. And so I would go to these conferences, I'd learn about the incredible technology and the advancements that were happening, and I'd be so excited. They'd be amped up, I'd be amped up. And then I'd always ask, like, where is this? Like, is this live? Like, how do I get patients access to this? And the answer usually was like, the grant is done. Like somebody will do something with it, but the grant is done. And it was so surprising to me as somebody who came from the startup space and saw how much time you spend iterating, trying to build the right thing, in like kind of building something from scratch where there was all of this incredible work that had been proven, right? These are posters where they present the data of how it worked. But the adoption of that sometimes doesn't come through on the other side of it. And so what really made me excited is, how do we make sure that adoption happens? That the research that gets done in the lab or in various places makes it to patients, and that they have a chance to be able to use these things. Technology is an easy example to think of for that, but there's so many ways that happens. And for me, as somebody who spent a lot of time in the startup space and kind of creating new things, I know a lot of times the biggest blocker to that is you are the expert in the thing that you created, right? But there's so many things outside of that space to like, how do you create the business plan for that? How do you create the marketing? How do you create the adoption? All the layers that go past the development of it is usually where things kind of fall through the cracks and don't get the adoption. And so my goal is to be able to fill those cracks.
That's true. In most cases, they're scientists and physicians.
Yeah.
They're not marketing software startup experts.
Yeah.
So, and they need that help in that area. They have the idea. How do you take it to the next step?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I thrive on, is because that's why I wanted to come and work inside of a health system, is because I think those are the people who should be designing these solutions and should really be at the core of what's going to be changing healthcare. And so helping people kind of bring those ideas to life.
Have you seen anything here? Again, I know it's early, and you don't have to be too specific, but are you starting to see certain areas or certain people that you're going to work with?
Yeah, so I spent the first few months here just getting to know everybody and what's
It's only
here.
been 3 months?
Yeah, about
Okay.
3 months. it's a huge place.
We'll give you a couple of years before we really press you for details.
Yeah. But there's been some very common themes. So I've met with nearly 100 individuals to kind of meet one-on-one and learn about their different areas and the things that they've developed, things that they're excited about. It's been very rewarding for me because just like those poster sessions where you get to really talk to somebody about what they're experts in and hear that passion, I see that everywhere here at the James. All of those meetings, I've been able to hear the excitement about a new idea. Almost everybody has an idea to bring to life. And so I think kind of the next step is just figuring out kind of how we make that plan and make those things happen for those kinds of people.
So it sounds like getting things done starts at the top, and Kim Rathmel is committed to collaboration and bringing things forward. She brought you in to help with that everything's being set up to help give scientists and physicians help in bringing things forward.
Yeah, I mean, they already do an incredible job of this, right? But it's just how can you accelerate that and help people tap into areas that they might not have had access to? The biggest thing that I think I've learned here is there's so much here, right? Everything that's accessible through the university, through the med center, through the James. There are so many different areas that it'd be near impossible for someone who is an expert in one particular area to know the full resources of what's available to them. So how do we become a catalyst to be able to make sure that people have access to the right resources and things that can help propel their ideas forward?
Now, I've also been able to talk to 100 or more of the scientists and physicians here, and I'm always, I just use the word passion. There's just so much passion, and they care so much. I'm pretty certain you're seeing this too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a big part of the reason why I wanted to come here as well, too, is I was going through the interview process. And as I was meeting different folks, I saw that. I saw that even before I came here. I saw the passion. I saw how much they care about patients here and how everything comes back to the patient. And when I think about being a patient myself and an advocate, I've seen the difference that makes, not just in somebody's mentality as they face their diagnosis, but in the actual care that they receive and their outcomes. And so I knew that there was no place that I would have rather been than working alongside these folks because that matters and they show up with that every single day.
Thanks. That's great. And good luck going forward. I'm sure you're going to help people innovate and bring ideas forward. I do want to know, I hope your health you're doing well.
Yeah, I'm very, very fortunate. So, like I said, that surgery really kind of changed my prognosis. I had that very large surgery in June of 2021. A few months later, we went back and burned a few more tumors that were left behind in my liver.
Burned with radiation?
Through ablation.
So, I do. Yeah. That's where they do the chemotherapy inside. Heated. Well, you tell me.
That one's a different one.
Okay.
This one is actually, so it's... So I had thermal ablation where they kind of stick really long, fancy needles. For me, it was in my side. And then they, at the end of that, they can heat it up really hot and it kind of burns the tumor and kills the cancer there. So I had several of those as well. I had about 10 of those during my surgery initially and about 5 afterwards. But since then, I've been off all treatment and have no active cancer. I'm just on active surveillance now, which I feel incredibly, incredibly fortunate for. And no, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing if it wasn't for that.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're doing well. And let's end on, I'm curious, after listening to you talk, we have a lot of advocates and fundraisers here at the James and the Columbus and beyond communities. What advice would you give people who want to be advocates, who want to raise money for the James, for Pelotonia, for maybe even create their own sort of event or nonprofit?
Yeah, I would say never doubt the power of a community, and also to always share your story. Everybody has a story. And I will say, as somebody who has kind of had a wild story now, there is nothing I love more than hearing other people's stories, like things that people thought were mundane. The number of times I've had people tell me like, oh, but it's not like what you had. But I lean in because I want to hear their story. is countless. Everyone has a story. And I think it's really important to learn how to share that story, because you never know who might be listening. The entire reason why I'm still here, I'll share a kind of brief story, is that I mentioned the medication that I was on. I had connected with a patient who had been in a clinical trial for that drug. That patient actually, during Kidney Cancer Awareness Month, about 5 years ago, ended up sharing my story alongside hers to spread awareness for Kidney Cancer Awareness Month. And she ended up sharing in that post long before any doctor was willing to say this about my case. She said, you know what I believe in, what I believe in the depth of my heart is that Katie is going to be standing here sharing her story and giving hope to the next Katie or Laura 5 years from now. I actually got to stand on stage 5 years to the day of that post and shared with a room full of patients at a patient kidney cancer symposium that story. And now here with no active cancer as well too. It was that post and the comment section that actually ended up connecting me with the NCI as well. And this was something that was just to raise awareness during Kidney Cancer Awareness Month. But when I say you don't know the power of a community, when you share, you never know who's listening. You never know who might need to hear your story. And the power of a community to impact change is huge, whether that's you raise $50 or you raise thousands of dollars. Every dollar counts. Every dollar makes a difference and an impact for patients. And even if no money is ever raised, like that story I shared with that patient that really made a big difference with me at their post, sometimes it's just a connection and a story that can change the outcome for someone.
One person can make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for your advocacy, and good luck as you go forward here at the Janes.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
This podcast is brought to you by the Ohio State University Comprehensive Cancer Center, Arthur T. James Cancer Hospital, and Richard J. Solove Research Institute. For more information, check out our website, cancer.osu.edu.